In the meantime, about half of all the world's leaders attended the coronation of King Charles III. 90 head of state attended the event, as well as 14 prime ministers from countries where the king is still their monarch. Servicemen and women from 33 Commonwealth countries took part in the processions, while kings and queens from Europe and beyond were also in the congregation. Many in the crowd were also visiting from overseas.
King Charles III has been crowned king, ending his 7-decade wait in a gilded spectacle, celebrating the British monarch's medieval roots. The British monarchy has always been controversial from the perspective of value and cost to the economy. But it goes beyond expenses. We can measure. There are many other pluses, and the boost to tourism and morale during the coronation are only some examples. Arise business analyst Bode Ososami considers these issues.
Like the UK Prime Minister said, the coronation is a moment of extraordinary national pride. The ageless institution of the monarchy is about stability and continuity in the context of a very dynamic environment with prime ministers coming and going, sometimes rather abruptly. The monarchy is also a priceless heritage attraction in terms of tourism and, of course, in terms of promoting British brands, especially the boost to the leisure sector. And unlike the Queen's funeral, which was somewhat sober, the coronation is festive and there is a lot of memorabilia. For example, I have my coronation mug, and quite a lot of tourists traveling in and out buying all that is British to remember this event. And to a large extent, the British people can come together to share in something most agree is a rare treasure. But the costs are plainer and easier to see and measure. Much of the royal family's expenses are covered by a sovereign grant of about £80 million per year, and that can reach up to £100 million in some years, especially where there are special events. And this grant does not include the cost of security to the royal family and several other costs, which can add up to as much as £300 million annually, reportedly. And this, again, does not include indirect costs like the royal family's exemption from inheritance taxes, although King Charles, like Queen Elizabeth II before him, does voluntarily pay tax on the income from his private estate. The royals need to constantly prove their usefulness to the British people, and they need to be responsive to the challenges. And if Charles can do this, I imagine the benefits will continue to outweigh the costs. For example, during the Second World War, the monarchy modeled the austerity that was the mood then, and converted their real estate to farms to grow food, to improve self-reliance on British food, and that echoed the appropriate theme at the time. Today, the main theme is about the economy, the cost of living crisis, which of course suggests a leaner institution and pruned down expenses, and of course a sense to push up the tourism boost as much as possible to boost leisure and travel, and for the king to be the best ambassador to attract business in a much more competitive scenario. King Charles has always been a patron of everything to do with conservation of the environment and climate change long before it became trendy, and he will be sensitive to the mood on the geoeconomics, which is very different compared to the period of the later Queen. I saw Andrew Bailey, the Bank of England governor, walking into the Westminster Abbey for the coronation ceremony looking rather pensive, which is a reflection of the state of the economy. Indeed, with inflation to the upside, markets are expecting another rate hike next week, and any boost to any sector of the economy and pockets of people will help. And it makes sense to milk everything out of this coronation commercially to help domestic consumption, as celebrations are much encouraged. Queen Elizabeth, of course, was a tough act to follow, and King Charles III will do well to build on the inimitable legacy she has left behind. The UK of today is very different from what it was decades ago. The empire is gone. The country has a Hindu prime minister, a Muslim mayor of London, and a Muslim first minister in Scotland. The British King's legacy could be to consolidate on the existing inclusiveness while being a bit more helpful in pushing British interests and the brand in business and strengthening of the economy. In other words, finding and exploring new competitive advantage for the United Kingdom now that the empire is over. But also, most importantly, understanding the need to leverage a different win-win partnership in the Commonwealth, all in a future which is not just hard to predict, but is constantly recalibrating its trade flows and political relationships.